inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shay Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shay Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. Today's guest is Heather Heuman, owner of Sweet Tea Social Marketing, where she helps business owners to thrive in business with social media marketing. We talk about what working by God's grace looks like for her and how she leans in and really trusts God with the results of her business as she is faithful to show up daily with a heart for service. So sit back, listen in, and enjoy this conversation with Heather Heuman. Heather Heuman, what's going on, sis?
Hey, things are really well here in South Carolina. Thank you so much, Shay.
Yeah, so you and I met, I think about 2 years ago, maybe a little more than 2 years ago. Where were we? In Utah. At
yes.
Sean's, I think we were both speaking at Sean's entrepreneur retreat, Christian entrepreneur retreat. So we got a chance to meet then, and that was fun. And so here we are a couple years later, and now we get a chance to chat here on the podcast. And so before we hit record, we were just kind of getting caught up with what's going on. And I know that, you're in this social media marketing space and helping a lot of believers. And I suspect people who are not believers as well, with how they show up online and grow their businesses. So I just want to talk about your story of what it's like for you to do business in partnership with God. But let's start by you sharing how you even got started in this business in the first place.
Yeah. So sometimes there's I can keep both answers short for the sake of what this is, but I'm just going to give your audience the raw, candid truth. So I was a special ed teacher turned digital marketer, but the journey was crazy. I got married when I was 19 in college. I was married for 5 years. The person I was married to wanted to get their doctorate. I quit my teaching job. We sold our house. We moved to Georgia. And in about 3.5 weeks after being there, in a 2-minute conversation, he came home and said, I did not meet his needs emotionally, spiritually, physically, or intellectually, and said for me to please move out since we lived in married housing. So I know that that's a lot, but I'm just telling you.
That is a lot.
It really was a 2-minute conversation. So even though we're just starting this episode, I literally want you guys to hear me that it was that fast. It was like a 2-minute conversation. So I was a believer. He was a believer. I didn't believe this was happening. I was praying for him. I was talking to my pastor. We lived in married housing. So technically, I kind of actually really did have to leave, though I was like, I don't want to leave. So 2 months later, I went to my job, and I had worked part-time at a grocery retail chain because when we had moved, it was just before the start of the school year in August, and I wasn't able to find a teaching job. And so I just went to my employer and I said, my life has just fallen apart. Are there any opportunities with a company to move? Someone introduced me and said, there's an opportunity in Nashville and there's one in Hilton Head. And so I'm originally from South Carolina. I got an interview. I ended up 2 days before Thanksgiving moving to a new town. I knew no one. I was working 65 hours a week. And within about 30 days, I found myself suddenly single, just really on the inside feeling broken.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was terrible. But the coolness and the reason I even just share that is God was there through every moment. I don't believe in divorce. I still don't believe in divorce. It's not what God's plan is. But through that, God literally worked out every detail of I had health insurance within 5 days of moving to Hilton Head. I ultimately ended up meeting the owner and founder of a digital marketing agency while I was there. And even though I loved retail, I love people, I was tired of working 60 hours a week, being the single girl who was asked, do you want to work on Easter because you don't have a family? And so I said, I'm going to take a $15,000 pay cut because I financially am responsible for no one but myself, and I can eat ramen noodles if I need to. And so I took that pay cut and went in about a 2-year time window. And this is in 2000. For everyone who's listening, I don't know if you're old enough to know what AOL was and all these things.
Prodigy.
Old time, the .com era was coming about. But ultimately, I went in 2 years from office manager to project manager to web designer to graphic designer. And literally during the whole .com boom, got feet on the ground training while they were paying me of just like what digital marketing was, what it was to try to take people who didn't know you to build connections. And that's really how I ended up in this space. And then the fast forward journey is I met my current husband, Wayne, in 2001. We got married 2002. So I've been married nearly 18 years. And that journey has taken us from my husband, Wayne, was in the military. We moved everywhere. And I was just wired to connect people. So minus business, I like to bring people together, make their lives simpler, introduce them to other people, and shorten their learning curves. And it wasn't until 2010 that I went to graduate school. And that's another awesome God story. But I ultimately started my first company in 2011. And it was a small town in Kentucky. And I said, this town has no digital resource of family-friendly, fun things to do for busy families that want to know where to do stuff. And so I use Facebook and Twitter to build and grow that to a 6-figure business.
Wow. And that was in 2000. When was that?
2011.
2011. Okay, good.
And then in 2014, we moved to South Carolina. Again, another long, crazy story, which we don't have time for today. But I'm just being honest, you guys, I didn't want to move. The move was to my hometown where my family lived. And I had all this business and we had started raising a family. We had 3 small kids. And I was like, if I'm just being honest, I was like, God has grown my business from nothing to like prosperous. I lacked that God could serve me and help me and use me in a different zip code. That's the truth. I didn't want to move. And my husband, who had just experienced a terrible traumatic experience of losing someone in his family, said, I feel that we should just pray for God to just open doors. I think it's important for us to live near family. And I think your family is a great influence. And I think we should move to South Carolina. And so I just let go. And I was like, okay, God, whatever you want. And so literally, again, within 30 days, my husband got a transfer with the VA to the office in Columbia, which is where I'm from. And we were renting our house at the time because a house in a different state with a military move hadn't sold. But it literally seamlessly worked out for us in about 35 days notice with 3 young kids under the age of 9 to up and come to South Carolina. And that is when in 2014, I said, okay, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I'm here. And so in 2014, I launched my Sweet Tea social marketing company. Well, I still was running the company in Kentucky. So I ran both for 3 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I was like, man, I love this, but I don't live there anymore and I'm 10 hours away.
Yes.
And so I ended up selling the business. But I ultimately just was like, around 2015, I just felt God saying, Heather, you're a digital missionary. Like, stop worrying about the titles, be willing to show up. I want to take this crazy journey of how you have used social media and you can help Christian CEOs, you can help business owners. And by me using my marketing savvy social media love, I can partner and align with businesses that they know their craft, they know their skill set, but they kind of tolerate the marketing or they tolerate social media, or they oftentimes tell me they don't know what they don't know. And I feel like me as a digital missionary partnering with them amplifies their light for Christ.
Yeah.
So I do have clients that are not believers. And that's honestly a case-by-case basis, but they go to my website and it says, we help Christian CEOs and business owners thrive using social media. And sometimes I've had people, they're like, I am not a Christian, but we've got this pet shampoo and we would still love for you to help us. And yes. I'm like, okay, I love dogs. I have 2 dogs. I totally can help you. Yes. And it still sometimes can afford itself to be a great connection. So It's just like, I'm willing to go where God wants me to go.
Yeah, that's super good. It's so funny. You're talking, and the whole time you're talking, I'm still stuck on the fact that you used a phrase I had never heard before, which was married housing. I'm like, what is that? The whole time I'm hanging here with you, but that's in the back of my head this whole time. I'm like, married housing? I've never heard of married housing.
Yeah. So if you're married as a college student, no, granted, I haven't lived that life in 20 years, and maybe there's a better word that they have used, and this is in 2 different college campuses, but if you are a student and if you're married and if they have like co-ed type dorms or apartments.
Oh, because you were in college at the time.
Yes, this was at a university. And so we were living on this university in Georgia, and it's called married housing.
Okay. The fact that you said it was a university, I'm like, okay, now it cleared up. It was really bothering me, so I had to bring it up. Okay. No, but this is so good. I love how one of the things that really stuck out about your story is just every time you guys took that step out on faith, just believing God as he was leading you, how things would just kind of line up as you moved, right? It's like kind of make the decision, go. And I'd see just I heard that multiple times in what you shared there. Now, so I want to talk about just what has been some of the most significant challenges that you've had to work with, or the Lord has had to help you walk through how to do, whether you need to make a shift in a mindset or a shift in how you were operating. Like, what's been a big shift for you that God's really walked you through?
Yeah. So in full transparency, I have like some different levels of service I have done for you, where I will create someone's social media strategy plan for their company. I take about 30 days to put it together. They do it. I pay, I would say, premium pricing for it. And I know my value. I have people, and I'd say it's a small number, but we take about 3 to 4 clients that we do their social media for them, because I do not want to be an agency where I'm trying to do social media for 50 people. That makes me want to scream. But I do genuinely like being in the weeds. I like knowing what's working in real time. I feel that makes me a better teacher, and it makes me know that I'm not teaching things that only worked 8 years ago. And so then there's that. And I charge premium pricing. But when I do my kind of like me saying, I want to teach you how to fish, social media is not rocket science. If you do not have a team of 15 and it's maybe you and a VA or you and a very small team, but you know social media can work for you, I have mentally struggled with pricing myself accordingly to help people know, one, I know what I'm doing. I want to shorten their learning curve. And I just had this personal mindset. And I would say as a servant leader, it's a balance of going, I'm not trying to come up with a manipulative pricing structure to like game the system. But at the same time, my experience and all the courses I've bought, and I've been a student of many, the disconnect of all the information, I believe we can all go to Google and find lots of information. What's been the difference for me is when I do a program or go into a mentorship where they get me or I get someone and we are face-to-face on a Zoom talking, screen sharing, here's the problem. And so I was like, I want to add that into my program because I want to not have people feel stuck and not feel that they're not seen. And so when you add yourself and your, accountability team giving one-to-one support, to be in integrity with what I'm teaching, I need to elevate my pricing.
Yes.
And so I was struggling with that because I was like, I want this to be accessible. But at the same time, I just said, I've made tough decisions. I've signed up for programs that I was like, woo, I don't know if I've got like all of those 12-month investments like in the bank, but I know I've got the first 3. And I am prayerfully just believing that this is a good choice. And so it's that balance of going, I know what I know. I know that I am totally saying I'm here with a genuine place. And I'm also the same person to say, this isn't a right fit for you.
Yes.
And so I've leaned in over the last 4 months of knowing, and it's not a matter of knowing your value, but it's almost walking out my value.
Yes.
And genuinely, and as a marketer, I sometimes have to balance this in my head. And so when you're, quote, making your pitch, I'm probably like countercultural, but I'm just like, hey, guys, this is 12 payments of $500, or you can pay in full and save $1,000. And at the end of the day, I'm happy to walk through scenarios of, is this a good financial decision for you? But at the end of the day, if your goal is to get here and you're here, I want to help you get there, and you get to make the decision on whether this is a good fit for you or not. If you've got questions, I'll talk to you. If at the end of this conversation, I don't think it's a good fit, I'm going to tell you that because I want to sleep at night in full integrity to be like, yeah, you should pay your water bill.
Yeah.
Like you should do these things.
Absolutely.
You know? And so again, I'm like a realist in the fact of sometimes as a marketer, I feel like it's almost like a disadvantage, but I'm just like, guys, I'm just going to keep things real. This is how this is. And I feel that that's going to resonate with the right people. That's
right. That's exactly right. Before we hit record, we were chatting about just kind of the tension, especially when you're in something like marketing and there's people that you learn from, there's people that, you may admire in this space or whatever. We were talking about just like that tension of like, you're wanting to work just in the pace of God's grace for you and be aligned with what he has for you. But at the same time, you're looking at other people. You might fight some of the comparison things how are you kind of operating in the tension of that? And what's God teaching you through it?
Like I am driven. I like to set really high goals for myself, which oftentimes can make it feel like I'm disappointed. So I just kind of did an entire new method of teaching and delivering. I helped lots of people and lots of people that didn't buy and some people did. So it's like I had set a number of, I want to make $50,000 in this launch. This is what that looks like. I'm praying over, I believe this. And ultimately, I didn't hit my goal. I hit $26,100. And so initially, I was sharing with you, Shay, I was sad and I genuinely was disappointed. But I was disappointed on just here's the thing I had set for myself and I didn't accomplish it. But I just had to sometimes reframe how I look at things. And so in that exact situation, I did not meet my goal. My goal was 50,000. I reached half. But when I said, okay, if I reframe my mindset, I just made $26,000 in 10 days. And in truth, all the people that signed up were people who had never known me prior to those 10 days. So it wasn't even the people who I have built social proof with over the last 6 years. They were brand new people. And so I said, that's a win. And then I also know in the model of what I'm doing, what I just did, I'm doing it 5 more times in 2021. So again, reframe. I said, if I have the exact same number of people and none more, which I could be disappointed by that in theory, I will have made $26,100 times 6, which for anyone who does math, and I'm not really great at math, but I pulled out my handy dandy calculator and that comes up to $102,000. So my positive reframe is I tried something I had never done before. I took imperfect action and I believe that I simply just created a 6-figure revenue stream that ultimately is something that I genuinely love to do.
Yes.
And so I was like, that's a win. That's a win. So sometimes it's just being open to the possibilities. I don't think it's wrong to have high goals and to set them, but I do think it's important for us to really just sit back. We can all, especially if you are a leader, you probably are doing and giving all kinds of advice to other people. But I think it's important that we extend grace to ourselves and we say, gracious, something that didn't exist. I didn't fall flat on my face. I didn't quite reach what I was looking for. But guess what? The second time I do this later this spring, I will be better and more people might potentially join. But even if they don't, I still feel like I'm winning and I'm ultimately just serving and I'm here to just do what I can to help others.
Yeah. So has the Holy Spirit ever led you to do something that's completely counter to how you would normally do it or how you've been taught to do it or what's standard in the industry as you've been doing this business over the years?
I mean, I would say 2 things that pop to my mind. One is just like, I think some people are snarky on social media, and I don't even like the word snarky because it's kind of got a negative tone to it. But salty, snarky, something, and they do it, I believe, from the sake of being controversial, because there is truth of if you kind of do stuff to ruffle people's feathers, it gets that mad people and the happy people all riled up. Right. I'm not a big advocate of that, but I believe in current times that there are many leaders, even leaders of faith, that are so scared to just speak truth of what they feel that God's laying on their heart of what's true, that they are hesitant to put any of their own thoughts out because they feel that it will negatively impact their business.
Right.
So for Heather, and I feel like God has always just kind of just tugged at my heart in this way. And it's literally been this whisper of, don't care what they think. As long as your heart is leaning into knowing that my word is truth, and there's a balance. And I sometimes have to focus on the grace side, because to be honest with you, I lean heavy on the truth side.
Yes.
But I want it to be laced in grace.
Yes.
If it means that people unfollow me or they don't sign up for my program because they say, oh, wow, she just kind of like said this about this, I'm okay with that, because I know in my heart, I'm doing it from a place of, I don't want to repel people, but I believe as followers of Christ, the light that we have to shine when we know that, Satan is very real and darkness is very real. And I know that we're in such a battle of spiritual warfare that I am willing to either lose followers, I'm willing to lose business, but I feel that God is just saying, be bold. Yeah. Be bold with me as your focus, not be bold with you as your light, but for God as being the light.
Yeah, that's so good. And so if you're anything like me, when it's time to do those types of things, it's like, you're not so much in a rush to do it. You really just kind of want to sit with him. And because you were saying how you tend to go, you're like, I'm heavy on truth, but I want to be laced with grace. And so is there just kind of like, even as you're creating content, sharing truth, is it just that sitting with the Father, just allowing him to like season your words, taking your time to go through it? Or you're just kind of like a little bit of a keyboard warrior with it, but like, hey, this is truth. I believe this is good. And how do you folks, it's like, is there a partnership with God in the midst of that too?
Yeah. So a couple thoughts. One is like, again, if anyone follows me personally on social media, and I've got some people that are like, wow, you really like say what you think. And I was like, actually, thanks to the Holy Spirit, I've probably only posted like 5% of what I really think. So I'm a huge advocate of not in passion or in the heat of the moment, kind of like going straight to the keyboard. Right. I like to just pray on something or just sit on something and just let it stir and just be I think words matter. And so those words matter on social media, what you speak, how you talk to your children, how you show up in your business. And so I personally like to not do lots of instantaneous, I feel this, let me put this out. Yeah. But the other one thing I wanted to say based on what you just asked me is I feel like the Holy Spirit has helped me know that my top focus is wife and mom. And I don't consider myself like a lot of other moms, which is a whole other show, but I love my family. Yes. And I've always wanted to step out in faith and say, God, I want to serve you. And I want you to know my top focus is my family. So for me personally, that means 25 hours a week while my kids are at school. I want to be like on fire and help the most amount of people and do anything that you want me to do. And so I see all kinds of people around me, and maybe they're working all the time or they're doing webinar trainings at night and they're doing this, that, and the other. And so I'm just constantly not like looking at them, coveting or wanting what they're wanting. I feel like Holy Spirit has given me a peace. Yes. Of saying, you've been able to have some awesome success. And yes, there are seasons where you're working 45 hours a week, but I'd say on the norm, I have been intentional at saying that means it's 25 hours a week. What does that look like? And just being open to shifting of the Holy Spirit, because sometimes we as just like type A. I want to be organized and detailed, and here's this and that. Just really just being open, leave room in your prayer time to just say, God, like wreck this if this isn't what you want.
Yes.
So even though I'm driven, even though I'm motivated, I genuinely will go to God and just pray and say, if you don't want this to be successful, even though I personally kind of do, I would so rather have your will over this be what my focus is. So don't bring people that if this isn't what you want, even if it's a good thing, because I think sometimes as believers, we're just like, oh my goodness, I've got this business. I help Christians. Like, why wouldn't God want me to be doing this? Right. But I think that it's always important to just be open to say, like, what does God want for me for this season? And just constantly just invite God into our dreams and our goals.
I love that idea of, listen, I've set some general boundaries around what my work life looks like. And I fully trust God that I can be fruitful, productive, all of that in this. And while I'm honoring, by doing this, I'm honoring the family dynamic, my marriage, and all the things that I, desire to do from that perspective too. And I love that. And that's a level of trust. Like that takes a level of trust in God to say, hey, I'm going to set this boundary, and I just believe you're going to bless this boundary that I've placed, right? And that I'm going to continue to operate in that. And regardless of what I'm looking at to my left, to my right, I'm going to stand firm in this and make pivots where I need to, but I'm going to stand firm in this. And that's a level of trust. And I think that's really good. What's been a surprise for you, Heather? Because, doing business in partnership with God and just being willing to lean into his voice and the course corrections, the pivots, and all that good stuff. What's been one of the biggest surprises you've experienced where maybe you expected things to go a particular way or thought you were headed in a particular direction, but maybe the Lord wrecked it, like you just said a little while ago, or just completely shifted something or took you in a direction that you just never saw as possible?
Yeah. So when you ask me that question, kind of what comes to my mind is God using people in our lives to speak truth into us and to encourage us when we, I'd say, either believe the lies of the enemy or are just not necessarily bold enough. Someone might follow me, or they might just think that I've got this like super confident personality, or maybe they think X, Y, and Z. But it's like, even if I look back to the stepping stones of me being here, when it was 2010, the reason I went to get to graduate school, which ultimately I was getting a degree in management and leadership, which ultimately is what opened this whole world of business up for me. That wouldn't have happened if my husband, Wayne, hadn't said, hey, I've got this post-GI 9/11 benefit, and they'll pay for you to go to school. They'll pay for your books, and they'll give us $1,500 a month to kind of like go towards our housing expense. Would you be willing to get a master's, like kind of like as a job? And I was like, I'm not a good student. No, in full transparency, my undergrad, I wasn't like failing, but I was like a 3.4. I mean, I was like decent, but I wasn't like the 4.0 kid. But I just had all these lies and all this baggage from my first marriage of I'm not smart, I'm not good enough. I like all these negative things that were still in my mind. Like, here it is, like 11 years later. And my husband's like, just pray over it. I think you'd do great. I think you would be fantastic. And it was my husband's encouragement and my husband's almost believing in me when I didn't believe in myself.
Right.
That I ultimately went on to say yes. I did it. I kind of was like, oh goodness, this could be really bad. My kids were 5, 1, and 6 weeks old. And so I ended up getting my master's in 14 months. I had a 4.0. I was asked to speak at the graduation, which is ultimately what kind of like propelled even me being a speaker now. And so it's just crazy. I look back, there's so many more stories like that, Shay, where I feel that God has allowed people that were near me and in my life that sometimes saw something in me that I didn't even believe was possible.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really encouraging
to for sure.
One, say who are you allowing to be around you to speak into you? And are you bold enough or willing to just kind of just pray for the Holy Spirit to guide you?
Yeah, super good. All right, one last question for you.
Okay.
What's the current stretch? Like, what are you believing for right now in the realm of business? What are you believing God for?
I am just really believing for God to just kind of like blow the socks off of my goals. I have always been one that has struggled with being a visionary. And that's one thing I love about you, Shay. I see your stuff and I was like, I know you've like trusted and I know you've kind of like walked through, but I feel like what I see is I'm like, Shay's got this like vision. And on this journey, I'm like, God, I don't know what the vision is other than saying, I want to encourage and empower these Christian CEOs and leaders to know that this is something that they can do and just to be open and willing to God allowing me to be used as a part of these business owners' journeys. Yeah. And so I guess the answer to your question in short is that I am believing that God is going to actually give me that vision. Because right now, I don't necessarily know how to articulate what that big vision is. And I'm a doer, Shay.
Yes.
I'm just like, Lord, these were things that I've given you. I feel like I'm just praying for you just to guide me. And I'm going to take action. And though it's very scary if you want to like know that this is going to work, but I don't know how right now in fall or spring of 2021, I don't know how to articulate what the vision is of what I'm even doing. But I am believing because God just continues to just kind of blow my mind with even just opportunities that come about, that in his timing and in me making sure that I'm spending time to be still and to listen, that he'll reveal that vision to me. And in the meantime, I'm just along on the journey, just enjoying the ride.
That's rich and an awesome way to end. Heather, thank you. I appreciate you joining us today. How do people connect with what you're doing? Sweet Tea Social Marketing. I love the name.
Yes, I love it. Yes. So I'm a sweet tea girl, but the best thing I would do is say, go to my website, sweetteasocialmarketing.com. If you find yourself someone that says, I need help, I do have a 31-day social media content calendar completely free. And you just go to sweetteasocialmarketing.com/content calendar. And you can get that and immediately just start executing that in your business. And you'll see, I think, your engagement and your traction on social to increase.
Fantastic. And you host a podcast as well.
Yes, I'm a podcast host. We're almost at 200 episodes. So
excellent.
It's Business, Jesus, Sweet Tea.
Business, Jesus, Sweet Tea. Look it up on your favorite podcast platform. Heather, thank you so much for joining today. This was fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shay.
Enjoyed this chat with Heather. And now I have Phil with me, our CEO of Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur. How's it going, Phil?
Hey, what's going on, love?
Let's talk about some takeaways. Like what stood out to you?
Okay, sure. Well, I have two here that are really pressing, so I'll share those two.
Okay. One at a time. What's number one?
One at a time, yeah. Okay, so the first one is Heather talked about servant leaders. And the thing that popped out to me is how she said she had to be, well, she didn't say it like this, but what I read into it is you must be careful when you are trying to give value to not, take away from the value of your time as well. And so I thought that was very important.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess it's probably a tricky area for a lot of people in terms of, they're really service-minded, good-hearted, want to help as many people as possible or, as deeply as possible and all of those things and placing value on that service. But having the value that honors your time, honors the value that's being created for the client and, all of that stuff's important. So that's good.
Yeah. Because we talk about over over delivering and under promising. But the backside or the backhand of that is like you can give so much value that and take away from, your time value, and you wind up not serving the people that you're really called to serve effectively.
Yeah, that's true. And you dealt with this in the massage business.
Oh yeah. There was, my desire to offer affordable massage backfired on me once. I remember running a promotion where I was like, oh, I'm going to do $30 massages, just as I'm launching into, my full-time massage business, and it flopped. Right.
And nobody wanted a $30 massage.
Yeah. And so I was asking questions of my current clients, and, they were like, well, I can see what the problem would be. People would look at it. I know you, so I know that that's a great value, because you definitely don't give a $30 massage. But, someone from the outside that don't know you, oh my goodness. Like, right. What's wrong with his massage? Why is it only $30? Right? So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the Walmart of massages. Mm-hmm. Oh man, but no, that alignment is really key. So that's good. All right, that's a good one. So our servant leadership should not lead us to under pricing, under charging, under anything. We want to be in alignment with who we're called to serve and the way we're called to serve them, and honor our own time and honor the value we're bringing simultaneously. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. What's the other one?
The other one is, she mentioned being honest in her marketing, or the way I took it was authentic, right? Yeah. And as you do that, you actually draw the right client unto you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very important, because sometimes, we might do a marketing and maybe not even from a place of trying to manipulate, but we're marketing ourselves as something, and we're starting to pull those people that were never designed to work with us. And eventually we'll wind up having to shift everything around, because we're not hitting the bullseye of what God has called us to do.
Yeah.
So that stuck out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And I remember when she was talking about just even in the sales conversation. So, you've got your marketing process, and then you have the sales and the, having the conversation with potential clients and all of that stuff. And just her willingness to trust God with the result, just to show up and to be honest about whether something's a good fit for them or not, or whether she actually thinks that would be great for them or not, or whatever. Just that honesty, as opposed to coming out of a fear, of that place of fear or scarcity, coming out of that place of service and of trusting God, knowing that God is the source. Clients are not the source. God is the source. And so that allows you to just kind of just flow out of a place of service, as she shared, but yet trusting God in the outcomes of the business. And I thought that was super powerful.
For sure. I thought that was awesome. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So those are some good takeaways. And you guys want to make sure before we close here that we have a course that's called Firestarter School. And it's for those who are, you're listening to this podcast. Maybe you've read a book or two that we've published for Kingdom Driven Entrepreneurs, but you're like, I want to practically walk this out, and I want to start taking some steps in that direction. Well, Firestarter School is for you. It's about 3 hours worth of mentoring and teaching, and very practical application of how you can walk out doing business as a kingdom-driven entrepreneur. And so we want to encourage you to take a look at that if you have not done so yet. Phil calls it the basic training of kingdom-driven entrepreneurship. You can check it out at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com/Firestarter School. We made it super simple. This is actually available at the price of your own choice. So when you go over to the website, you check it out, prayerfully choose your price, and then get immediate access. Again, that's at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com/Firestarter School. Phil, I'm thinking we should probably start sharing some of the feedback we get from those who are in Firestarter School, and start sharing some of those things during the podcast. We should probably do that.
Yeah, I think that would be good. And, the important thing of what you said about Firestarter School, it's practical application.
Yes.
A lot of times we learn things, we get head knowledge, and without the testing of the stuff that we have in our head, we don't really walk it out. We think we know stuff, and until you have to apply it in some way, shape, or form, you don't realize what you really haven't taken possession of.
Yeah.
And so I think that's very important. That's a key thing in Firestarter School.
Yeah, that's good. Which means this is also a reminder to those who already have Firestarter School that if it's been a while since you've listened, listen again. There's always, or finish it if you never finished it. But yeah, good stuff. All right, Mr. Bynes, thanks for joining me again. And you all, it's always a delight to have you here. We will be back next week with another episode of the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. Take care and God bless.
Deuces.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.